First of all, I want to give thank you to Dr. Herrera for your kind invitation to be with you this day. And I present to you something about thyroid disease and mainly surgery in 16th century Mexico in two main senses. One, those of pre-Hispanic times. We have some representations of goiter mainly, but very, very few indications about clinical facts or any more. And after that, in late 16th century also, Mexican surgeons start to considering some possibilities to operate thyroid and to make a new renaissance and revolutionary things. It talk about thyroid disease before Graves Basodow clinical descriptions of the relationship between exophthalmos, goiter, and some symptoms, or to talk about postoperatory mixed edema, are really a modern devices. It's not possible to say nothing about that or really speak about endocrinology before Brown-Sequard or Bernard experiments, because the concepts are new and the possibilities to develop these concepts are based mainly in discoveries made in 19th century. Before, the interpretations of goiter and some other possible endocrinological disease, recognizable as you see for the splendid Dr. Clark presentations and other more, are not possible because the concepts are different. The main concepts before 19th century and mainly before 1902, where the word hormone was newly recorded, are mostly speculative. Then, in pre-Hispanic Mexico, you can see some representations. This Olmec figurine, maybe 500 to 700 years before Christ, have a tumor in the neck, but we can't say anymore. In the middle 16th century, Fray Bernardino de Sahagún records some very important things about pre-Hispanic cultures. And one of these books, now as a Florentine Codex, preserves most of his Nahuatl informers, Mexican Indian informers, said him. This page comes from the Florentine Codex, and have a list of names, some class of dictionary of Nahuatl names on anatomical body parts. He records any word for thyroid or some like thyroid, and only say the words for neck or for growings in the neck. Kesh is neck in Nahuatl, and one of the words he recorded are Kesh posahuilistli, that is a growing, a bad growing in the neck. He doesn't say it anymore. Another scholars found some other words, Masatl Kesh posahuilistli, that signifies a deer, neck, bad inflammation of that tumor. Are the only words giving us some key to thyroid or neck disease. Another one interesting document is the Vocabulario de la Lengua Mexicana y Castellana, a dictionary of ancient Mexican idiom to Spanish, written in 1571 by a Franciscan friar, Fray Alonso de Molina. Molina doesn't use the term thyroid. He uses only papera. Papera is now identified as parotiditis. But in 16th century, we found that it's a very different thing because the authors, having noticed the ancient Greek papo, that signifies all the region under the chin until the sternal hole. Then any tumor, any growing in the neck may be called papera, and in 16th century they used also this generic term. As you can see after some of the other documents, papera is used in thyroid diseases and in a way really unspecific. We can see growing in thyroid in these not pregnant but recently birthed women. This comes from the western part of Mexico, and it's interesting to see that today, until today, is a part of the country with a lot of goiter, but endemic goiter. Really, we can say that it's easy to recognize goiter in pre-Hispanic Mexico because in the same regions where these clay figurines proceed was until really recently places where endemic goiter was really frequent. In Mexico, only in the 1930s, in the last part of the 1930s, was added iodine to the salt, and from then, endemic goiter goes down. This is another one. This is from the high plains of Mexico, and maybe 15th to 16th century. And this one was one of the first that was recognized. This is a very big goiter. And another one from the post-classic period, late 15th, early 16th century in Michoacan. Exophthalmos, I don't found never the relationship between exophthalmos and goiter in clay figurines. But we have a lot of exophthalmic figures. This one representing the sun, but the sun with some tracts of the rain god, the mouth of a jaguar, later converted in a mouth of serpent, was a common representation of the sun gods and rain gods, Tlaloc and Huitzilopochtli and other sun gods. The exophthalmos is a very frequent tract in every sun god or some representing figurines in all Mesoamerica, Aztec, Maya, Western cultures. This is one of them in Tikal, Guatemala. And this is a very curious figure because it represents a moon goddess taking between his hands a woman. It's a symbol of fertility. Apparently haven't goiter, but the exophthalmos is really appreciable. And this also doesn't represent goiter, but is exophthalmos in a dwarf. I put this not to claim some thyroid disease, but only to say that it's possible that later developed goiter We see clinically sometimes exophthalmos before coming goiter to be clinically appreciated, but maybe. Another possibility of thyroid diseases recorded in pre-Hispanic Mexico was put on this figurine Olmec, more or less 900 years BC. And some people interpret Valverde, one of our good endocrinologists now working at UNAM, proposed that possibility of congenital hypothyroidism in some of these Olmec figurines. But also, these have a very important representation. They take some tracts of jaguar face, are called jaguar face babies, or also baby face jaguar people, thinking in were jaguar as a possibility to represent first some totemic presence, but also to have some dynastic significance, because some dynasties of Olmec and after that Maya governance have in their families this type of face persons. Then the actual interpretation is that to be a member of the jaguar family gives you the possibility to be a better governant, because in all the symbolism of pre-Hispanic cultures, jaguar was the king of the animals and the king of the reigns, of the kingdoms in the night. And the first medical book written in the New World, the Codex called de la Cruz Badianus, Badianus in the magnificent edition by Emily Walcott Emart in the early 40s, have two chapters calling about some illnesses in the neck. This one is called Against Struma and Scrofula, and made also a synonym between struma, a fleshy growth in the neck, maybe thyroid disease, and scrofula that later become an suppurative ganglion, mainly due to tuberculosis. This other one talks about spongious growths in the neck, but also it is possible to correspond to several illnesses, and all the treatment have anti-inflammatory drugs. And the author said, with anti-inflammatory drugs you can cure this problem. Then we don't can to identify the problems that we treat, like thyroid diseases, but only said something about neck inflammatory diseases. Thyroiditis, maybe, but we don't know. Among the post-Spanish conquest books, we have this Treasury of Medicines. His author, Gregorio Lopez, was a very strange personage that goes to Mexico in the 1560s. Some pretend that he was a son of Philip II, and he lives as an hermit in Mexico all his life. He was really sick with an hepatic abscess, and after his cure, start to study medicine and to observe some patients and some remedies, and composed this book that was very popular in 16th and 17th century Mexico. This is a portrait of Gregorio Lopez, and he have a little paper, papera, employing the term to parotiditis, but saying some inflammation in the neck, mainly in the low neck. All the components of this recipe are anti-inflammatory ones. But the first book to talk about surgery in Mexico, 1578, was composed by Alonso Lopez of Hinojosos. That was a surgeon who worked in Mexico from the late 60s to the late 90s in the 16th century. In this book is the second edition of the book, 1595, have very interesting chapter about bocio, employing for the first time this term in Mexican medical literature, or the synonymous papera. Is two important remarks to do. First, the cause is rheum. That is a humor that runs along the aponeurosis, along the lateral glands, the glands situated in the lateral side of the trachea, and produces a swelling, say. Then it's also an inflammatory mash, but inflammation that can go to a fleshy grout. In the anatomical works of this epoch, that was very well known by Alonso Lopez, who doesn't know Latin, and then who cannot read Vesalius or any other Renaissance texts. Is this one of Juan Valverde de Amusgo, a Vesalius disciple that worked in Spain. I published it in Spanish. Then it was accessible to the surgeons that don't understand Latin. But you can see the images of the region. Only one in the extreme right side. You can see some that can be interpreted as thyroid. But Valverde in his text don't say anything about vascularization and innervation or thyroid innervation, not makes any remark about the proximity of inferior laryngeal nerve to the gland. Then, going back to Alonso Lopez de Hinojosa, he, in these little texts, revised everything related to the possibility to thyroid surgery, that papera, and say it's necessary when the anti-inflammatory remedies doesn't work, it's necessary to open, and you have two possibilities. One, to put a knife, put a red iron knife, and make 3 incisions, puntiform incisions, one in the upper part of the gland, one on the middle, and one in the down. And after that, left all the phlegm go out and put newly anti-inflammatory remedies and made expression and wait for the cure. Maybe, said Alonso Lopez, it's possible that the fleshy tumor go out completely. But if not, you can make a big open in the capsule, and he mentions the capsule, the thyroid capsule, and with the finger take out all the substance, employing all the 16th century remedies used to fluidify some parts of the body. Another man, Agustin Farfan, he a medicine doctor and surgeon, also working in the same time the last years of 16th century Mexico, says exactly the contrary, the opposite things. He said, it is very difficult to operate thyroid, to operate papera, uses the term papera also, because his immense possibility to bleeding and to don't have any ways to fight the bleeding. Also, if you take out all the gland, the people surely will be dead. Then we have the two opposite positions. That said, in 16th century Mexico, that said doesn't touch surgically any tumor in the neck, and the other one, a most humble, but I think a most active and a most experience-based surgeon, saying it is possible, but you can take a lot of precautions. Then we have a very, very early notices of thyroid surgery in 16th century Mexico. Thank you very much.